Welcome to the channel. Today we're sharing a cheating story you won't believe. If you enjoy it, please like and subscribe. Let's get started. It might sound odd, and maybe it feels strange to say, but I can't really tell when I started losing control. I'm not a professional or anything, so maybe it wasn't losing my mind in a medical way. Still, at that moment, only one thing mattered. I stopped caring about myself, my wife, even my job. I didn't bother with being polite anymore. Feels so fresh, like it just happened. But I'm getting ahead of the story. I'm Ethan, just Ethan to most people. I've been married to Isabella for 22 years. There's no need to go into every little detail of how we met and fell in love. That's not really important here. What matters is there are 3 things you should know before I get into what happened. The first is that I am not what you would call a big man. At 5'10" and 190 pounds, I certainly have the body for it. What I mean is that I don't do what you would call manly things. At least not now. I am an ex-Marine who served in Libya and then got injured and had to return home. It was then that I was contacted by a man in a black suit to join him at the FBI. I felt like Ethan Hunt, but he was British. I was sent to Mexico. My job was to help the FBI and the DA clean up messes after some special operations. My expertise lay in disposing of what was left so no one finds out what happened. Since the job was dirty, I never mentioned it to my family. I took an early retirement and settled down with my wife in a peaceful life. The second thing you need to know is that I don't handle confrontation well. Probably for the same reasons that I have done that a lot and now it gets to my head. I have mellowed down and don't like to argue and fight. When a fight at home finds me, I start to sweat, get dizzy, nauseous, and sometimes have a full-blown panic attack. Some people call it PTSD. My wife has tried tirelessly over the years to help me overcome this and nothing has helped. The last thing you need to know is that we are a normal, garden-variety couple. We eat out about once a week. We have a 20-year-old daughter named Olivia who is finishing up her first year of college when my story starts. Even our sex life is pretty normal 1 to 2 times a week. We are basically the couple who fades into the background. We aren't ugly, but we aren't models. We are kind of just there. Now that you have the info you need, I can start my story. It was a normal breezy day in early June. I got home, parked my car in the garage, and entered the house through the kitchen. My wife Isabella is usually in the kitchen making dinner, but today she was just sitting at the kitchen table with an almost empty glass of wine. I joked that it was still kind of early in the day to be getting plastered on wine. That's when she asked me to sit and that we needed to talk. Ethan, I want you to know that I love you very much, probably more today than the day I married you. My love for you keeps getting stronger every day. She began. I want you to fully understand that before I tell you what I am going to tell you. I feel all at once would be best, like ripping off a band-aid. I'm just going to say it and you can ask me questions or tell me whatever as soon as I am done. Okay? I choked out an okay, but I could already feel my palms getting sweaty. I knew this was going to be bad news. She had started off pretty much the same way she had 12 years ago when she told me that her mom had passed away. She took a big swig of wine and topped off her glass before she continued. There's no easy way to say this, so I'll just say it. I have been having an affair for the past 4 months. We met at the gym, if you can believe it. It started innocent enough. Ryan was giving me compliments every time he saw me, telling me how beautiful I am and how he hoped someday he could meet a woman like me. I won't insult you with the details, but we ended up in bed together after a few weeks. It started as just sex, but I've grown to like Ryan. He has told me he loves me. I'm not sure if I love him, but I do care about him and his well-being. I started getting dizzy and lightheaded. How could she be cheating on me? I found it quite odd she mentioned his well-being. I mean, who talks like that? Sweat started to roll down my face. I had to look around to try to focus. That's when I saw either should I say them. 2 suitcases packed and lined up neatly side by side in our living room. You're leaving me? My eyes followed my gaze and she saw what I was looking at. Heavens no, I am not leaving you. I want you to remember what I just told you, that I love you more now than the day we met, even the day we married. I love you too much to ever leave you. I couldn't even stand the thought. I was totally confused, in addition to being on the verge of a full-blown panic attack. I knew the signs and I was showing every last one of them. Are you kicking me out? I managed to squeak out. It was quite difficult given how dry my mouth was. No, that is not it at all. This is your house, honey. This is our house. We will always share a bed. You will always be at the head of the table. You don't need. She was cut off by the sound that pushed me over the edge into the worst panic attack I had ever had. The upstairs toilet had flushed. I turned my head towards her. She at least had enough of a guilty conscience to not look me in the eye. The man who is stealing my wife is in my house? Ryan lost his apartment. He needed a place to stay until he could get back on his feet. I tried to get up to get my hands on her throat, but my traitorous legs gave out on me the minute I tried to stand. I collapsed on the kitchen floor. I couldn't breathe. I was clawing at my tie so hard I was starting to draw blood at my neckline. "Oh, Ryan, quick, help me." Right before I passed out, I felt him put his arms underneath mine and say, "I got you, buddy." When I opened my eyes, I was laying on my couch in the living room. A wet towel was on my forehead. My shirt and tie were gone, and I was laying there in my tank top. I called out for Isabella. She went to the laundry room to throw your shirt and some towels in the wash. There was a little bit of blood and vomit to clean up. I am Ryan, by the way. I must have given him some look because he turned away from me and faced the window facing the front yard. "Look, man, I get that you hate me. I would hate me too. But I love her. If the only way I can have her is to share her, then that's what I'll do." Isabella came back into the room and sat on the couch where I was laying. Ryan excused himself and retired to the guest room where he was staying. "Ethan, I don't know what is going on between me and Ryan. He loves me. I love you. I'm not sure how I feel about him. Maybe I am polyamorous, one of those people who can love lots of people at the same time. Maybe it's just a phase. I don't know. I do know I can't live without you. I need you in my life, but I need to play this out as well. I would have done so without telling you, but he lost his place and needs a place to stay. I know my hiding it wouldn't have made it any better, but I didn't want to hurt you." I turned away from her and said, "I need some air. I understand. Your place is at the head of the table and in bed with me. Ryan is staying in the guest room. Whatever we can do to make the transition into whatever this is easier. Just say the word. I love you, dear." She kissed my forehead and went on up to bed. I just crashed on the couch and stared at the ceiling till 4 a.m. I snuck upstairs and grabbed work clothes out of the closet. I slowed down past the guest bedroom on my way to the bathroom, and I could hear Ryan lightly snoring. My vision started to go blurry and I rushed to the bathroom. I got dressed and got out of there as fast as I could. It is my house and I will not leave it. I know my PTSD is getting the better of me every time I confront them. I need to work around it. I need to either get out or get them out. I was struggling mentally. I was seeing visions from Ankara. It was my brothers, they are calling me. I shook myself up. I need to do it peacefully, no violence. Take a deep breath and try to control. For the next week, my routine was the same. I got up before the sun and left for work. I stayed at work till after everyone else left. I ordered some delivery for dinner and got home past midnight when I knew Isabella and Ryan would already be asleep. I left word with my secretary that she was not to put my wife's call through. She tried calling my cell repeatedly and she texted me nonstop. "Honey, are you okay? We need to talk about this. Why are you still at work?" I texted her back some excuses about how we got really busy at work and they needed me to stick around. We all knew I was avoiding the house situation. This worked well for a week until I got a visit from my boss. "Ethan, we have a problem. Security called me up complaining. They say you were here at 5:30 every morning this week and staying till midnight. They run a skeleton crew outside the hours of 9 to 5. They don't have the manpower outside of those hours to watch the parking lot and stuff like that. It's a liability if you get mugged or worse. I don't know what kind of problems you have that are keeping you from wanting to go home, but you can't hide out here." I told him I understood and that I would go back to my regular hours. I declined his invitation to talk about it. How do I tell my boss that my wife has moved her boyfriend into my house? I would be the laughingstock. I needed a new strategy. I decided tonight to go home and see what happens. I came into the house and Ryan was on the couch watching TV and Isabella was in the kitchen. "I didn't expect to see you home. You get that problem at work under control?" she asked with hopeful eyes. "Not sure," I responded. "Boss told me I could stop staying so late and just try to handle it in a normal 9 to 5 fashion. She told me to go make myself comfortable and that dinner would be ready in a few minutes. She would set the table and call us when it was ready." I walked into the living room and that Aholi was in my recliner. I sat on the couch. I figured I would try to be upbeat. "Hey Ryan, what are you watching?" "Sports Center. They doing a piece on the Astros. God, I hate them. I grew up in Phoenix. I'm a Rangers fan," I told him. No offense, man. I hate you guys because you win all the time. I would trade 5 of my players for 1 Bennett. Dinner is ready, you two, Isabella called out. By the time I got to the kitchen table, Ryan had already taken a seat next to my wife. My place was sitting across from my wife and her boyfriend. Couldn't take it. My heart started racing. The rage, the demons. I need a hammer. No, my M27. No, Beretta M9. I quickly got up. I told them I had something to take care of and that I would be up later and made a run for the basement, locking the door behind me. Control your breathing. Count to 10. Repeat. After just standing there for 20 minutes, I decided to make myself as comfortable as I could. I pulled out a beach lounge chair and set it up. My phone beeped as my wife texted me. You okay? Yes, I am just working on something. I might be a while. You should eat without me. You should probably head to bed without me also. Okay, you work on what you need to work on. Take all the time you need. I do miss sleeping next to you. Come up to bed when you're done. I texted her back that I will see and then turned off my phone. I sat in the chair and just looked around. The wall unit that the chair faced was torturing me. Boxes of Christmas decorations, boxes of photo albums and things like that. Everything to remind me of the good times my wife and I had, just me and her. I turned 180 degrees to get away from all that stuff and looked straight at the one thing that was worse to look at. It was a brown box that was about 2 feet square with 2 words in black marker on the side, Dad stuff. This box was the only thing that Dad left me in his will besides his warehouse. Near the end of his life, he bought a warehouse in the industrial part of town, so he had more space to work on his cars and his projects. It was in a part of town that was now very run down. I haven't been there in almost 10 years. I took the box down and opened it up. 3 of his work shirts were on top, followed by about a half-dozen car magazines with pages folded and stuff circled. Might as well have been written in German for all I could understand it. His folded American flag was next, along with his dog tags. At the bottom of the box was his final taunt, his toolbox. I opened it up and took out the family hammer. I laid in the lounge chair and ran my fingers up and down the carved-out letters that spelled family. I dozed off. I don't know how long I slept, but as I wiped the crud from my eyes, I knew I didn't wake up on my own accord. Started off really low. I could hear the noise but didn't know where it was coming from. I stood up and pulled off the cover to the vent, and I could then make out what the sound was. I could hear Isabella screaming with ecstasy. They were having sex. I sat back in the lounge chair. I clutched the hammer to my chest and held it tight. No blood. No brain matter. No broken bones. No. Never again. I held the hammer hard. Count to 10. Repeat. Tears rained down my eyes. I cried myself back to sleep. It had been 2 weeks since Ryan had moved in. True to her word, my wife had left me alone to sort stuff out for the most part. There were still the little talks she wanted to have, reminding me how much she loved me, how much she wished I would return to our bedroom, and how she wanted to make love to me or screw me depending on how she felt that day. Every time she was talking to me, my mind was blank. I had visions of the hammer, blue drums, the stew. I quickly shrugged myself and just walked away. I hadn't given her as much as a kiss since the day of that talk in our kitchen. My life had been relegated to working and then coming home, hiding in the basement till they both went to sleep, and then I came up and slept on the couch. I had a lounge chair set up down there with a small fridge and a radio to listen to the Rangers games. I had also been listening to them screw twice a week for the last 2 weeks. No, I'm not one of those guys who got off on it. For me, it was more like a punishment. Punishment for what? I am not exactly sure. My only concern was to lose control. It would not be nice losing control. My daughter. No, I need to stay in control. Think. Count to 10. Repeat. I heard voices from the vent. At first, I thought I had heard moaning, but when I listened closely, I realized it wasn't moaning. My wife was sobbing. I listened intently to the conversation she had with Ryan. I don't know what to do, Ryan. I love him so much. I didn't realize this would hurt him this badly. He won't talk to me. He doesn't spend any time with me. He barely even looks at me, and he hasn't touched me in for weeks. I don't mean just sexually either. I mean he hasn't initiated any touching at all. He doesn't kiss me when he gets in from work. He doesn't stroke my hair. He doesn't hug up against me when I wash the dishes. It's like I've lost my husband. It's worse than that because I still see him every day. What am I going to do? Come on, Isabella. The guy will come around. This had to be one shock to his system. But it's like I told you, he has been relying on you for so long that that is all he knows. He comes home and hides in the basement because you were not there to lead him to anything else. Now, why don't you take off that teddy and I can make you forget all about him? Is that all you think about? I am losing my husband, the man I love, and all you want to do is have sex? You may love him, Isabella, but I love you, and right now, I would love to see you without that teddy. If you want to screw so badly, why don't you go screw yourself? My wife yelled. There were some shuffling noises and a door slammed loudly just before I put the cover on the vent. I heard one last statement that creep Ethan, Ryan said with hate in his voice. Was I the crazy one or was my wife the crazy one? What was she expecting? She brings a man to my house, screws him in my house, and expects me to suck her toes and love her? The rage was back. No, relax, take control, count to 10. 6 weeks after Ryan moved in, things started coming to a head in my household. My wife was annoyed most of the time. The rest of the time she spent crying in her room. Ryan was annoyed and probably sexually frustrated as they had only screwed once in the last 2 weeks, at least from what I could hear. I was living status quo, almost as if I didn't exist. I still resorted to hiding in my basement, but this night I had something to ask my wife. Isabella, can I talk to you for a second? I asked her. She was shocked. Not only was I not hiding, but I initiated a conversation. Ethan, you can ask me anything. Well, Olivia is due home from college next week after her finals. I was wondering what you were going to tell her about Ryan. Gee, I hadn't really thought about that. I guess I would tell her the semi-truth that Ryan is a friend we are helping out through a tough time and he is staying in the guest room. I think I would leave everything else out. Okay. I was just curious, I said as I started to head back towards my basement. Just before I got there, my wife had a parting shot. I'm more worried about what I am going to tell her about you hiding in the basement and sleeping on the couch. Worried what you will say or worried what she will think of her loving mom, who opens her legs for someone other than her husband. I wanted to be more nasty, but my rage started to come back. I rushed back to my basement. I could hear her sobbing behind me. Why is she crying? What was she thinking, screwing another man and getting an award for cheating wife of the year? I was in my office having lunch when my secretary knocked and then came in. Mr. Miller, there is a man out here who says his name is Ryan and that he has to see you right away. He says that it's important and that it's a family matter. He looks a little angry. Should I send him in or should I call protection? Send him in, but if you hear any kind of commotion, call protection immediately. Ryan walked in looking pissed at the world. I offered him a seat and he declined. Listen, Ethan, we got to talk man to man. Be at this address at 7 p.m. sharp. He'll be there waiting for you, so don't be late, he said while handing me a business card. I quickly scanned the card and realized that this address was a few towns over and not in the best of neighborhoods. Okay, the neighborhood was a dump. Ryan, you're here. I'm here. Just say what you have to say, I said, starting to sweat. I figured as difficult as this talk might be, it was better for me here in my job with protection nearby than some sketchy out-of-the-way place. Just be there, he said as he turned and walked out. As soon as he left, I looked up the address on Google. I discovered that he wanted me to meet him at a dive bar. The reviews of the place ranged from stay the hell away to not unless you bring your shotgun. Something told me that tonight was not going to be my night. I got to the bar promptly at 7 p.m. I was right. It was quite a dump. One waitress looked about 8 months pregnant, had a fresh black eye, and a cigarette hanging from her lips. There were bikers and a few guys who looked like they were just taking a break from cooking meth. Ryan seemed in a much more cheerful mood as he waved me over to the booth he was sitting in. Bring me a shot of tequila with a beer back and a scotch on the rocks for my friend here, Ryan told the waitress. As she was bringing us our drinks, I was scanning the bar for the quickest exit should gunfire break out. Look, Ethan, Ryan started as soon as the waitress walked away, we have to fix this thing between you and your wife. She loves you very much. I know my being there has screwed up your way of life. I really didn't mean to come between you two. But when I saw her at the gym, it was magic between us. Are you listening to me? I have to admit I wasn't. As soon as he opened his mouth, the hairs on my neck stood up and I was covered in sweat. I tried to focus. I looked out the window and noticed how the sun was just almost about to set. I looked up at the TV just in time to watch Anderson lead the Astros onto the field in their game with the Rays. When he slammed his hand down onto the table, my attention returned to him. I listened intently to what he said next. Okay, screw it. I tried doing the nice guy with you, but it's not working, so I'm gonna go with the truth. I can't believe for once I have to rely on the truth. I don't love your wife. Never have, never will. What are you talking about? I asked him. I don't love her. My plan was to screw her a few times and move on just like I always do. I'm not the type to fall in love. That's why I usually nail married chicks. They get all freaky since it is so out of the norm for them. They do crazy stuff. My original plan was to turn your sweet little wife into my sex-hungry 304 and then move on to the next conquest. It's just your shitty luck that I lost my apartment right around the same time I was getting ready to drop her. Instead of dropping her, I gave her the I love you figuring she would float me some cash to get a new place. Instead, she got this bright idea to invite me to live with you too till I got back on my feet. It worked out great for me. I needed a place to stay, and having sex with a wife while living with her husband is a total badass move. Then you had to go and screw it all up with your silent treatment and hiding in that damn basement all the time. My dirty little screw toy got all emotional about how you were feeling and what she could do for you. The sex supply for me dried up. The one time I screwed her in the last few weeks, she just laid there. Why are you telling me all of this? I am telling you this because I need your help. I got a few things in the works and should have my own place in about a month. I am not staying at your place with no sex for a month, so I want you to knock off this emotional drama crap and start paying her some attention so she will get all sex crazy again. It wouldn't hurt you to throw a screw into her every now and then also. This could be good for you. You play ball, and when I leave I make you look like a king. I tell her how bad I feel about being disruptive in your marriage, and I know how much you love her and how much this is hurting you and how I can't stand between two kids who love each other so much. I will tell her to see how much you love her, that you let her not only take another lover but were willing to let him live in your house to make her happy. I can spin that to make her love you more than she ever did. Plus, she will try to screw you to death. If you don't play ball, well, let's just say that your little girl will be home next week and she is one fine piece of meat. What did you just say? I asked. I couldn't believe my ears. I was so shocked at everything Ryan just told me I wasn't getting his point. You keep playing the whiny little witch, and I will make sure I get real friendly with your daughter. She thinks I am a friend of the family. You have seen how convincing I can be. 2 days tops and I will have her too. I have already taken your wife. Don't make me take your daughter too. Now I am going home to screw your wife, he said as he grabbed my car keys off the table. You just sit here and think about what I said. I expect you to be happy-go-lucky when you're home. You can take a cab, he said as he grabbed his jacket and walked away. That was the exact moment I let go of my control. He had threatened my little girl. He just crossed the line. A weird sensation came over me as he started to walk away. It was an eerie calm. I was no longer sweating or nauseous. My mind was focused, but it was only focused on one thing. My only thought was to eliminate the threat to my daughter. I no longer cared about the world. Hell, I didn't even care if I lived or died as long as that Aholi never laid a finger on my little girl. A hand grabbing my shoulder brought me out of my daze. I looked up to see who was shaking me. He looked like he stepped out of a 1950s greaser movie. He had on a white t-shirt, blue jeans, and a leather jacket. His hair was slicked back, and he had on a thin gold chain. Huh? I asked. It seems he was talking to me and I had no idea what he said. I ain't gonna tell you again. Get up and get out of the booth. My lady and me, we want to sit down and order something to eat. I asked you 3 times already. I looked over at his girlfriend and she was completely fake. Nothing on her was original. She had on fake eyelashes, her lips were injected with Botox, she had extensions in her hair, and her tits were cartoonishly big. Then I noticed something that put a little bit of panic in my heart. I looked over her shoulder at the TV. The Astros were up 42. It was the top of the 5th. The game had to have been on for at least an hour. What the hell? It only took a few seconds between Ryan leaving and this guy to start grabbing my shoulder. Didn't it? I looked out the window again and it was completely pitch black outside. I picked up my glass and looked at it closely. The outside of the glass was covered in sweat, but all the ice inside was completely melted and it was warm. Hey, the greaser shouted. Get the hell out of the booth. I ain't gonna tell you again. But I haven't finished my drink, I told him, showing him the glass that was in my hands. Now you are done, he said as he grabbed the glass out of my hands, poured its contents on the floor, and put the glass on the bar. He then grabbed my left elbow with his left hand and with his right hand he grabbed my armpit and yanked me out of the booth and towards the bar. Something happened right then. I suddenly felt a cool breeze on my face and heard from over my right shoulder. If I let you go, are you going to be cool? I can't have you flipping out anymore. I will be cool, I said honestly, not feeling an ounce of anxiety. I suddenly realized I was outside and it was the bouncer talking to me. How did I get outside? I asked. Buddy, you feeling all right? The bouncer replied. Please just tell me what happened and how I ended up outside. I was scared. Twice almost back to back. I had lost time and didn't know what was going on. I was walking over when I heard that guy yelling at you. He grabbed you out of your seat and pushed you towards the bar. You grabbed an empty glass off the bar and hit him upside the head with it. When he grabbed at his head, you grabbed the bar stool and smashed him across the knees with it. Dropped him like a rock. You kicked him about 4 or 5 times before I was able to get over to you and break it up. Sorry, pal, but you got to go. We aren't the type of place to call the cops. But you can't stay here. You sure you're okay? I assured him I was, thanked him, and quickly walked away. What the hell was going on? Was my mind playing tricks on me? Did I black out and lay into that a holy greaser? Or was my mind playing tricks on me when I talked to the bouncer? I walked 2 blocks down and got into a cab. I made him stop at a pharmacy on the way home to grab some bandages. Apparently, I did get into it with that greaser guy. I cut my hand open when I hit him with the glass. Little did I know it was going to get worse when I got home, or better. It'll let you decide. I walked quietly into my front door. I didn't have my car, so I didn't use the side entrance. I tried to be quiet, figuring if they were upstairs screwing, I could get in undetected. This thought was shot to hell when I walked into my living room. There was Ryan sitting naked on the sofa I was using to sleep on. My wife was on her knees between his legs. They didn't see me since she had her back to me, and he had his head leaned back and his eyes closed. I watched for about 45 seconds. I am not one of those guys who gets turned on watching his lady work another man. Hell, he didn't seem any bigger than mine. I wonder what she sees in him. Hey there, big guy. Glad you made it home okay. Hi, honey. Ryan told me that you and him had a nice long talk and that you finally were able to work out whatever was bothering you. I knew you just needed someone to talk to. I am so happy that the rough part is finally behind us, my wife said. Ryan told you we talked? I asked. Yeah, good buddy. I told her about our conversational specifics, guy talk, but I did tell her things would be a little different around here. It will be better for everyone. Ethan, why don't you come over here and join us? Don't you worry about me, I can certainly handle the 2 of you, she said, giggling. I threw my jacket on the love seat, walked over to my wife, and grabbed her by the throat in my hands and pulled her up so her face was almost touching mine. I know you can handle 2, dear. Most filthy scum buckets can. I dropped her and started to walk up the stairs. I got halfway before I turned to look at them. Ryan was shooting daggers at me with his eyes while my wife had grabbed the Afghan off the back of the sofa and covered herself up looking embarrassed. If you 2 are going to have sex where I sleep, I'm going upstairs to sleep. I quickly locked the door to the master bedroom. I stripped the bed and put all new clean sheets on. Just as I got ready to lie down, there was a knock at the door. It was followed by a pounding. Ryan was yelling that we needed to talk. I grabbed my headphones out of my end table and started listening to some music. Not right now, not here. Your time will come. It only took me 20 minutes to figure when and how. I figured I should get my sleep. I had a lot to do the next day and not a huge amount of time to do it. I could hear the hush talking emanating from the kitchen as I came down the stairs the next morning. I stopped halfway down the stairs to eavesdrop and see if I could hear anything. The only thing I could make out was my wife saying, "How could I have messed up my marriage like this?" I got to the bottom of the stairs fully prepared to just leave without interacting with them. But there it was. It was taunting me. It was almost as if the couch was smirking at me. I took off my jacket and laid it on the love seat as I started to drag the couch towards the front door. I had the door opened and the couch starting to go out when I looked over and saw my wife and Ryan just peering out of the kitchen. They just stood there and watched, not really knowing what to say or do at that moment. After I finally got the couch to the curb alongside the rest of the garbage, I came back in for my jacket. Honey, are you feeling okay? My wife asked. I smiled and said yes and went about putting my jacket back on. Why don't you sit down in the kitchen and I can fix you something to eat? No thanks, Isabella. I'm going to hit the Denny's on my way to work. I can make you waffles and bacon here. Why pay for Denny's? Because I am pretty sure that the person who brings my waffles and bacon at Denny's isn't a goddamn filthy slimy grease bucket. I spat out as I headed back for the door. As I slammed the door, I heard Ryan yell out that I was a son of a witch and my wife began to sob. I had no time for them. I had a lot to get done and not a lot of time to do it. Turns out I may have been wrong. The waitress at Denny's pretty much looked like a goddamn goddess. I laughed a little too loudly as she brought me my check. I looked over my list of places I needed to go and things I needed to do and put them in the following order: 1. Bank 2. MoneyGram 3. Call Olivia 4. Doctor's office 5. Pharmacy 6. Call electric company 7. Sex shop 8. Hardware store 9. Grocery store 10. Liquor store 11. The important call: I threw an extra 10 in the bill for the waitress for having fun at her expense. It was time to get moving. The stop at the bank went a lot more quickly than I would have expected. You think they would have taken more time to cash in my bonds and arrange a loan on my 401k. Instead, it took me all of 15 minutes to walk out of the bank with $35,000 cash. I combined the next 2 items on my list. I called Olivia while I waited in line at MoneyGram. I spoke to her very briefly. I told her that her mother and I were having problems but that we were working on a solution. I told her I was going to MoneyGram her $7,000 and that I wanted her and her boyfriend to take a week-long trip. I told her that her mother and I needed that extra time alone to finish sorting out our problems. She wanted to call her mother and thank her for the money to take a trip. I advised against that, telling her that her mother didn't know I took the money out and telling her that might start another fight. I told her to give us a few days and call us from wherever they went on vacation. After waiting about an hour at the doctor's office, I finally got in to see him. As soon as he asked me what the problem was, I let the waterworks fly. I told him that my wife was cheating on me and that she moved her boyfriend in. I told him I was having a horrible time getting to sleep with all the sex that they were enjoying all around my house. He prescribed a sleep aid. It would help me fall asleep and get into REM sleep, but after that my body would take over. He also told me to take it right before I was ready to sleep since it worked pretty fast. I thanked him, subtly reminding him of the doctor-patient privilege, and I was on my way. He had called my prescription in and it was ready when I got there. I sat in the car for almost an hour talking to the electric company. I gave my info and credit card number over the phone and they told me my request would be taken care of in the hour. By the time I had made my last 4 stops, it was near 4:30 p.m. The last item, the call, took 5 minutes. Pleasantries exchanged and time fixed. The timing would work out to my advantage. I pulled into the garage, making sure I only took what I needed right away out of the car and headed inside. I took notice that neither my wife nor Ryan thought to bring the couch back inside because it was still sitting by the garbage. "You son of a witch," my wife hollered as soon as I closed the door. "Did you think I wouldn't find out? The bank called me today to make sure everything was okay since we never usually go over an $14,000 withdrawal at one time. If you think for one goddamn second that you were going to hide that money and divorce me, you got another thing coming. I told you that we weren't breaking up over this, and I mean it. So help me God. If you serve me with divorce papers, I will fight tooth and nail to get it delayed, to go to counseling. And if I can't stop the divorce, I will take every last cent we have. You no good rotten." "It was going to be a surprise," I said, looking meekly at the floor. My subservient behavior and what I said had stopped her in her tracks. She looked at me, confused and bewildered. It was time to see if I could pull this off. "Look, honey," I said, taking her hand in mine. "I know I haven't been taking this too well. I know I acted like a real holy last night and this morning. After my talk with Ryan last night, I started to feel better about the situation. I think I had too many to drink last night because when I came home and saw how much pleasure Ryan was giving you, it immediately came into my head that he was better than me and that you were going to leave me for him, so I lashed out. I lashed out this morning because I was embarrassed about how I acted last night. I took the money to try to make things right between the 3 of us. I have a few surprises in store, like buying a new couch," I said with a chuckle. "I was going to cook us a nice dinner and tell you all about it then. Now, honey, why don't you and Ryan have a seat in the living room and I will bring you a nice glass of Pinot Noir for you to enjoy while I get the steaks and baked potatoes going. That is still your favorite, isn't it?" "Yes," she said as a smile beamed across her face. "I deserve an award for the act." I went into the kitchen and prepared their wine. I opened 2 sleeping pill capsules and put them in her glass. Ryan was a bit bigger, so I put 3 into his. I brought them out their wine as they were snuggled up close on the couch. I wondered if they had any clue as to what was about to happen. I went back into the kitchen and put the steaks and potatoes on. It was about 5 minutes later when I heard Isabella yell, "Ethan, come in here quick. I think something is wrong with Ryan." I walked into the living room to see her leaning over Ryan. His mouth was hanging open and drool was coming out. He was mumbling and his eyes were drooped shut. I looked over at the coffee table and saw one empty wine glass and the other completely full. "Honey, you didn't drink your wine. Something is wrong with Ryan and all you can say is I didn't drink my wine? What is wrong with you? Wait, did you do something to the wine? What the hell is wrong with you? Her eyes rolled back as my right cross connected with her face right above her left eye, knocking her out cold. It's odd because I remember wondering as she fell to the floor if jail was like you see on TV and if the food in jail was really that horrible. I went back to the car to grab the last few bags in the back seat. First was the bag from the sex shop so I could get the 2 ball gags and blindfolds. The next was the bag from the hardware store. I wanted to be sure, so I used both duct tape and zip ties. I blindfolded and gagged them both. Then I zip-tied their hands and their feet, followed by duct taping their hands. I dragged him into the garage and managed to get him into my trunk. I lifted my wife and put her in the back seat. When that was all done, I thought again about prison and how I might end up there if this didn't work out like I planned. I went back inside and finished cooking the meal. If I went to prison, this would probably be the last good meal I would have for a long, long time. As my wife started to come to, I threw an ice-cold glass of water in her face to quicken her waking up. Took a few seconds to clear her head and realize the situation she was in. She was sitting upright in a hardback solid wood chair. She was zip-tied by her wrists to the arms of the chair and her ankles were zip-tied to the legs above the support piece so she couldn't lift the chair and slip it off. She was still gagged but no longer blindfolded. She started trying to thrash about but she was tied down too tight. Panic set in her face and she started to cry. "Honey, I want you to calm down. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to hurt you anymore. I'm sorry about punching you in the face. The drugged-up wine was my first choice, but you didn't drink it. I needed you here to see something and just asking you to come wouldn't have worked. You will see why in a few minutes. I am going to take off the ball gag. Please don't scream. We are at my dad's old warehouse, so no one is going to hear you at this hour and all it will do is give me a headache." I leaned over and undid the ball gag. She stretched her mouth and jaw out. "Ethan, please don't kill me." She started to sob again. "Honey, if I wanted you dead, you would have been dead hours ago. Like I said, I need you to see and hear something for yourself. Look over there," I said, motioning to the laptop on the desk. "That is a live feed of what is happening in the other room. Ryan is in the same situation you are in. He is tied up just like you are. He's still out cold but otherwise okay. I'm gonna go in there and have a chat with Ryan. I need to put the ball gag back in your mouth so you don't scream while I talk to him. Is there anything you need before I go in there?" She asked for some water, which I gave her. There was still fear in her eyes as I put the ball gag back, but I think it was more fear of what I had become rather than fear for her own safety. I left her in the office as I went down to the workshop. Ryan was still slumped in the chair. He was tied up like my wife, but with one difference. He was tied down at the wrist, but his hands were fastened flat, face down on the arms of the chair as well. There were 3 spotlights shining right into his face. I didn't want him to see the camera facing him, and I didn't want him to see too much of where he was. I waited about a half hour for him to start to stir. As he started to grumble out of his sleep, I slapped him as hard as I could across the face. "Wake up, Ryan boy," I shouted. As the cobwebs started to clear, the eye-screwed-up look plastered on his face was priceless. "Ryan, you and I need to have another one of those man-to-man talks like we had before. Oh wait, you're still gagged. It's kind of hard to talk while you are still gagged. Let me get that for you." I reached over and undid his gag. "What did you do to Isabella?" was the first thing out of his mouth. I'm not gonna lie, it shocked me so much it stopped me in my tracks. He knew he was in a bad spot and his first thought was of her. I kind of respected that. That lasted for a split second when the thought hit me that he was asking what happened to her, so he knew what he was in for. "Ryan, let's just say that Isabella is gone." "Gone? What do you mean gone?" Ryan asked. "Ryan, you're a smart boy. I don't think I need to spell it out for you, do I? But Isabella is the past. Let's talk about the present. Let's talk about you and me and how this is going to play out. Ethan, please don't hurt me, man. You don't have to do this. I thought we had an understanding. You know, I never loved her. I told you I was just having sex with her. I told you I was going to move on soon enough. I know I kind of pushed it when I moved in and we threw that in your face, but she was your wife, Ethan. She was the one who broke vows with you. She was the one who took your trust and threw it away for some new sex. Now, I admit I knew she was married, but I was never going to come between you two. She was the one who said we should tell you and that you would accept me moving in. Jesus, Ethan, it's her you should be mad at. I am just a horny guy who saw an opportunity and took it. You can't kill me for that. Can you? I turned and looked at the camera before turning back and looking at Ryan. Ryan, I know all that. I told you Isabella was the past. I dealt with her betrayal already. You are in that chair because you threatened my daughter. Come on, man. That was a joke. Okay, not really a joke, but just a threat. I knew you weren't playing ball with the sharing wife thing. Your wife had gone on and on about how much you loved your daughter and how she loved that you always looked out for your daughter and that there wasn't anything you wouldn't do for her. I figured a little threat would get you in line for the little time I had left staying at your place. I was never going to touch her, I promise. I would take that promise, but I know you have a habit of lying. But don't worry, I will not kill you. I promise not to kill you. But you see, I talked to a friend of mine today. He was very upset with what you have done. I put the gag back in his mouth. A man walked in from behind the lights. Ryan, meet Santiago Mesa Lopez, aka El Paso. He is a cook. His specialty is stew. He wanted to personally meet you. He will be taking care of you. By now, Ryan was leaking fluids from his body. Have a nice trip, Ryan boy. I walked behind the spotlights where he couldn't see me. I took one last look at the camera before turning it off. My wife didn't need to see what came next. I went back to Isabella. I loaded up all the lights, cameras, laptop, and anything else I brought. I went up and got my wife. I undid her left hand, brought it over to her right, and zip-tied them together. Then I undid her right hand from the chair followed by her legs. I brought her down to the car, put her in the back seat, and drove home in silence. When we got home, I told her to stay put while I took everything out of the car and put it away. When I was done with all that, I poured myself a drink, put it on the coffee table in the living room, and then went back into the garage. I used a pair of pruning shears and cut her hands loose. I tossed the shears on the back seat next to her and went inside. I took a nice long sip of my drink as I sat in the living room. I wondered if she was going to run out and call the cops. That thought quickly left my head when I heard her come in and close the door to the garage. I could hear her breathing as she stood behind me at the doorway to the living room. I wondered if she was thinking about burying those shears into my back. I decided not to take the chance. Don't you want to know where Ryan went? I asked without turning around. She walked around me and sat on the chair opposite from me. Her hands were empty, so I guess she wasn't going to stab me in the back. Literally. I'm not really sure how you feel about what has happened over these last 12 hours. I guess I never really made it clear about how I have felt over the last few months. I know you were probably a little angry with me, but we will get into that later. As for the money, I sent Olivia $7,000 to take a little trip. I didn't want her around for the next few days. The rest of the money went into an insurance policy, you could say. You might be feeling angry enough to try to take me out in my sleep or call the cops for what I did. Should anything like that happen to me, some of my friends are going to come pay you a visit, and they are not going to be as nice as I have been. You are the only loose end on this now that Ryan is disposed of. I am sure you have questions or stuff that you want to say. I want you to take a few days and really think out what you're going to say because one wrong word and even I don't know how I'm going to react. Now, why don't you clean up and get to bed? She sat there for a few minutes, staring at me like I was a stranger, before she went upstairs, showered, and went to bed. I guess to her I was a stranger, and to myself also. This was uncharted territory for me. We would both see how this would play out. It had been a quiet 3 days. We had both coexisted in the house without saying one word to another. She had been doing the cooking and the cleaning, but we didn't eat any meals together or sleep together. She was waiting for me when I got home, sitting in the same spot in the kitchen she was that fateful day. She asked if we could talk. I told her we should move to the living room. We sat opposite from one another and she began. I have thought a lot about us and everything over the past few days. You must think horribly of me, and you wouldn't be wrong. Like I told you that day, my love for you has never wavered, although my mind had. I had convinced myself that this thing with Ryan would never come between us. But it did. It was nice having someone new tell me I was beautiful and that I was smart. I know you told me those things too, but somehow it was different. I started to think that you told me those things because you had to, as you were my husband. Recently, I never thought you told me those things because it was actually true that you did think I looked beautiful and that I was smart. I took you for granted and convinced myself that if you left me, I would get over it. I never knew what I had until you stopped talking to me and touching me and basically left me without leaving me. If that makes any sense. I screwed up. I screwed up big. I just hope I didn't screw up big enough where we can't work this out. I love you and will do anything I can to make this work between us. Ethan. I stood up from my chair and walked over to where my wife was sitting. I bent down and kissed her forehead. Do you know I have been waiting for 3 days to hear you say those words? Now pack your shit and get the hell out. What? She said in almost a whisper. You heard me. I won't continue to live with a cheating scum-sucking hack. Pack your shit and leave. They'll give you 30 minutes. I told her as I started to set the timer on my phone. But honey, she started to plead. 30 minutes and you are out of here by cab or by ambulance, or worse in a blue plastic drum. But 31 minutes from now you will be out that door. She again looked at me as if I was a stranger or as if she was seeing me for the first time. She wasn't quite sure what to do. She just sat there and stared as her heart broke. After 4 minutes, she got up with a tear in her eye and started to head upstairs. I could hear movement around up there but wasn't sure what she was doing. Would I really hurt my wife, the woman I had loved for so many years, the mother of my child? Honestly, I'm not sure myself. Luckily, it didn't come to that. She came down the stairs and put her suitcases by the front door. She turned and looked at me with sadness in her eyes. She had taken about 3 steps toward me but stopped abruptly as the alarm signaling the end of the 30 minutes started going off. I turned off the alarm. She marched right over to me and kneeled down in front of me. I love you, Ethan. I have since the moment I laid eyes on you. I will till I close my eyes for the last time. She leaned into me and tried to kiss me on the lips. I pulled back. She stood up and tried to get away before the tears started to fall. She failed miserably. She grabbed her suitcases and walked out the door and out of my life. Almost as soon as the door closed, I broke down into uncontrollable sobs. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't control it. The truth of the matter was, even after all she did to me, I lived with her for 22 years. I breathed the same air as her. I still loved my wife, and it broke my heart as well to throw her out. To say my daughter was pissed would be an understatement. She accused me of sending her the money to get her out of the way so I could throw out her mother. She was absolutely right, and I had no defense against her accusations. I told her about her 304 mother and her slimeball lover. She did not believe me. I just shrugged my shoulders and told her, your call. Believe or not. She was angry and left. Her boyfriend came and shook my hand. She screamed at him to stay away from me. Well, I don't really care. As of now, she is going to be safe. That is all that matters right now. As for me, I divorced my wife. We let the lawyers work it all out. We were never both in the same room at the same time, so I didn't have to look at her. She tried talking to me numerous times. I just couldn't do it. I don't know if I would have felt love or hate and was afraid of feeling either one of those. The house was sold and I moved out of state. I now live in a 1-bedroom apartment. Work is okay. My company let me transfer to a different office, but I had to be low man on the totem pole. My dating life is horrible as well. I have been out of the game for so long I am awkward and unsure. Most of my dates are one and done. So I have a lousy job, a crappy 1-bedroom, and almost no love life. These are the sacrifices I made for my daughter. I did see my wife one more time. 3.5 years after the whole Ryan situation, I had heard through the grapevine that my daughter was getting married. I knew no invite would be coming. I had found out where my wife was living. She had recently moved in with her new boyfriend. So much for love you till the end of time. I went to go see her. They were coming out of the house and going to his car when I walked up. Hello, Isabella. Oh my God, Ethan, is that you? I can't believe it. Daniel, this is Ethan, my ex-husband. Ethan, this is Daniel, my boyfriend. Daniel and I shook hands while he shot me a look that said, don't start any trouble. I didn't know what she told him and what she didn't, but it looks like she let me be the bad one to everyone. I was okay with that. Isabella, can you and I talk for a second? I asked. Daniel looked at her as if to ask if she would be all right. Sure, Daniel. Can you wait for me by the car? She asked, satisfying his concern. Daniel walked towards his car. Ethan, it's been almost 4 years. How have you been? Listen, Isabella, I won't take up too much of your time, I said, starting to walk her to Daniel's car. I heard that Olivia was getting married. I know she hates me. I don't blame her. I am so sorry, Ethan. I never told her what really happened. I was so ashamed of myself and what I had done. I let her hate you so she wouldn't hate me. So after all, I still end up being the bad man. It's okay, I guess. I will play that role well. I was here to pay for her wedding, but I guess the $300,000 that I had here in my pocket will do well somewhere else. I walked away. I found a dog rescue center and walked straight to the front desk. I asked to meet the manager. A woman walked in and asked to follow her to her office. I sat with her and gave her the money. Please use it wisely. She was shocked and thanked me. She said, would you like to take a quick walk? Maybe all the dogs want to thank you. She took me around. My eyes landed on a German Shepherd sitting in a corner, tail tucked in and head down. I walked to him and the woman said that they may have to put him to sleep. He does not respond to anyone and has not been eating ever since he is here. I looked in his brown eyes and I saw myself. He raised his eyes, licked his lips, and his ears raised. There are times in your life when your heart says, this is it. For me, it was that moment. Rocky was a scared dog. Traumatized might be the right word. He was rescued from his owners after they had abused him for over a year. Two of a kind. I don't have anything to love or anyone to love, so I decided to try my luck with him. I asked the manager if I can take him with me. It seems like she was more than happy to see him off. It has been a year and I have never in my life seen a more spoiled and pampered dog. My bed is his bed and my food is his food. At least he loves me unconditionally and does not bring home his lovers. Well, just to add, my daughter heard about me trying to give her money for her wedding, so she called me a month after she got married. She did not beat around the bush and came straight to the point. No, how are you? I missed you or any of that crap. She is her mother's daughter. She asked for the money. She said that it will help her get the down payment on a house she wants to buy. I just hung up. 3 days later, she was at my door banging and screaming. I let her in and once again she asked for the money. She said she deserved it as she is my only child. I sat there quietly and let her carry on her rambling. Once she was quiet, I said, I am good, honey. She looked confused. Since you did not ask, I thought I should tell you. Now if you would excuse me, I need to go for a walk. She stood up and said, where's my money? I slowly stood up and with a very gentle voice said, the day I got to know that my daughter is getting married and I was not to be part of her wedding, I donated it all to a dog shelter. So you may want to talk to the dog. Rocky here was a resident, and I guess he would be happy to explain. Rocky stood up, snarling with all fangs bared. A snarling German Shepherd is not something you see every day and not someone you want to talk to, especially about money. What can I do? He is just a dog. I don't think my daughter will be back anytime soon, not until my funeral. My PTSD has not gone away. I still wake up scared, but I wake up to a lot of licking on the face. Thanks for watching. What do you think about Ethan's actions? Right or wrong? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories.